Hey everyone, Andre here, and today I'm going to show you 251 chord progressions. A YouTube user asked me to give a bit more detail on this, and so, well, 251 chord progressions are really the basis for a lot of jazz music, maybe even half of it. And you know, it's hard to see how three simple chords can form the basis for so much music, which is actually quite complex. The idea is that the perception that, you know, and the concept that these musicians have of chords is very different from what the usual rock guitar player has. So a basic 251 chord progression for most of us is this: D minor, G, and C. Right? Because we're in C major, so D is the second chord, G is the fifth, and C is the first. Well, for jazz musicians, this is 251 is just simply the very starting point, and then there's all kinds of options that open up. So today we're going to look at least of a couple of them and give you some idea of how this works, although it's impossible to tackle such a huge topic in a short video like this. But you know, we'll do what we can. So the first thing we're going to do is actually, I'm going to put up a screen now with all the chords we're going to use today, which is going to be a bit chord heavy as a session. So pause the video, copy them down, and I'll see you in 5 seconds. Okay, I hope you copied all those chords now. So the first thing that we're going to change is, instead of using triads, which means major or minor chords, we're going to use seventh chords. So we're going to use the triad plus the seventh of each chord. And just doing this really adds a bit of sophistication to the whole thing. So D minor seventh, G seventh, C major seventh, with a bit of rhythm. Okay, same chords, but it sounds a lot better. And so this is the beginning of what we're going to do today. From these chords we can actually add more notes. We don't have to stop at the seventh. So for example, we can take an 11th and use it. We can take a 9th. Alright, if you don't know what these are, you should really go back and look at some music theory. This is really basic stuff, and you'll pick it up just like that. Alright, so if we want to do a bit of a variation on this, let's do G7th 11th, which is this chord, C9th, I'm sorry, D7th 11th, oops, that's the second, G9th, and C major 7th, with a bit of rhythm. So you see, it's the same chord progression, but the feeling of it changes because we're changing the extension, and so the melody that is created on top of these chords will be different. So, but until now we've only added notes that are within the scale, so simple extensions of the scale. This is not substitution. This is just, you know, playing fancier chords. Substitution is actually taking one chord and change it for another, and there's plenty of options, and that's what makes 251 the basis for so much music, because nobody actually plays 251 like we would. You know, they play in a more complicated way, and there's a lot of rules for this, and we're not going to get into that. But I will show you one example that I like a lot, and it's really interesting, and it will give you a very precise idea of what's going on with substitutions. What we're going to do now is keep the second and first chord, but the fifth we're going to change it, substitute it. Instead of the dominant chord, which it is now, the fifth chord of a major chord progression, it's the dominant chord, we're going to change it for the substitute dominant. Substitute dominant is starting from the dominant chord, in this case G7, is that chord built on a tritone from the root. Alright, it's really simple. G is the root of our dominant chord. So we count up a tritone. A tritone is a diminished fifth. So we find the fifth, which is D, down one fret, D flat. So D flat can be the root of a new dominant chord that we can use instead of G. So instead of playing D minor 7th, G 7th, C major 7th, we can play D minor 7th, D flat 7th, C major 7th. So it sounds like this. Right, it works perfectly, and it's different than before. And the problem here is that the notes we're using are not part of the scale. I mean, at least not all of them. And that means you really have to be careful if you're improvising on top of these chords to know what you're doing and where you are at every time, at all moments, because otherwise the scale that works here will not work on this chord and will not work on this chord. All right, and so that's when probably soloing becomes more of a arpeggio kind of thing rather than a scale kind of thing, and we're not going to get into that today. And one more thing, you can actually add extensions to these chords. So instead of playing, this is the D minor 7th 11th that we played before. Now instead of playing a D flat 7th, a normal chord, let's just play a D flat 7 13. Alright? And then C major 7th. So you can do all kinds of things. Once you get the substitution done, then you can actually use it as you would a regular chord. So using extensions and stuff like that. Alright, so I know this is complicated, but I hope you shed some light on some of these topics, and I don't know, give me some more ideas for the next weekly sessions, or I'll come up with something, and I'll see you next Friday. Alright, thanks.